behind. Thank you for your patience. I'm Michelle Arkusky, and I'm the executive director for She Is the Music. Thank you for joining us today for our 5th Music Business Basics, focusing on legal. If you're new to our community, welcome. Please be sure to follow us on Instagram and check your emails, because we'll be announcing some amazing opportunities and events within the next month. But we have an amazing conversation today with amazing guests. I'm so grateful for their participation. Without further ado, I'll throw it over to Jennifer Baltimore, Senior Vice President of Business and Legal Affairs at Universal Music Group, where she focuses on film and television, live events, direct-to-consumer offerings, and other commercial initiatives and special projects from the work of the UMG Executive Board. She is incredible, and I will hand it over to you, Jennifer.
Michelle, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I'm excited to be participating in this panel and to just have guide this discussion with Janine Small, who has her own practice. Her practice includes representing festivals and superstar artists, video and event producers, senior executives, startups, and aspiring and developing artists. Janine is an alumna of University of California, Hastings College of Law, and American University. And I've had the good fortune of negotiating across the table from Janine and Kelly Vallon, who's a partner at Ziffrin Brittingham in their music division. Kelly represents artists, songwriters, music producers, and music-related entities in a variety of complex music industry transactions. She's worked on both sides, having been in-house at UMG companies and others, CAA, and also, and working for a law firm in private practice. And haven't yet had the good fortune of sitting across from Kelly, but I'm sure the universe is preparing us for that moment, Kelly.
I'm sure.
So I'll start with Janine and Kelly. What brought you to this place of practicing entertainment law, and in particular music? And was it by design or by luck that you got here?
I would say that for me, it was totally by design. I grew up in a family that was, in the live music business. My dad was a concert promoter. And so I kind of saw music from that perspective growing up. And then, I just got bitten by the music bug, and knew that I wanted to do something in music, but I wasn't sure what it was that I wanted to do. So I basically, throughout college, tried to work everywhere that I could to figure out what it is that I wanted to do. And I really figured out that I wanted to do something that was in music, but was also intellectually demanding. And I figured that, becoming a music lawyer would be the perfect marriage of those two things. And so I went to law school with the specific intention of doing what I do now.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know that mine was by design. I always had a big mouth. Lawyers like to talk. And when I was like 3, they used to say, one of my dad's friends heard me, they could hear me, they couldn't see me. They would always call me a walking filibuster. And I would say, never in a million, billion, quadrillion years am I going to become a lawyer, ever. That was never going to happen. And then, I went to college. I didn't know what I was going to do. Somehow I was, my brother-in-law had helped pick some, helped pick some classes. And I found myself as a justice major. And then, I just quickly turned that to a minor, but, I kind of, for some, there was no one else in my family that was a lawyer at the time. And I was I was doing word processing. It probably isn't even a career anymore at the time. And I was just, I was still getting the push to go to law school. And I figured, well, I don't know what I'm going to do in life. I don't want to, be a secretary. My mother, I also, was of a generation where a lot of the women didn't work. And a lot of the women were not necessarily in great situations at the home, but they couldn't really leave because they didn't have the finances or the means, and they weren't educated. And so And, you know, they were salaried by their husbands. And I always said no one was going to tell me what, when, and where to do with my money, you know, and I wanted to be independent. So they were willing to send me to law school. So I took the opportunity, and I was a big deadhead. I had traveled and seen over 100 concerts, and, you know, seeing music was always a big thing for me. So, you know, once I decided I was going to go to law school, that was definitely my goal, was to be music. And if not that, it would have been like international, where I love to travel, or environmental. But really from there, I just kind of, I went to San Francisco, where the dead were. I went to Hastings, and, you know, I did everything I could in law school to kind of point myself at the time towards music law, right? The entertainment club, the ABA, whatever it was. But so it became by design once I got to law school. But being a lawyer wasn't by design.
So Janine, can you speak to what your career trajectory was or has been?
So after, you know, from law school?
Yes.
Yeah, so before, you know, so, you know, during law school, I actually worked a few internships. I worked with a local entertainment lawyer in San Francisco. And I also was part of the American Bar Association as a student there, and I put on symposiums. I became symposium editor, and I did what I could in the entertainment business. So I wrote a bibliography on music law at the time, which would be impossible to update at this point, but at the time there wasn't as many articles and stuff. And then I took the kind of normal. I was lucky enough to get a second-year job at that mid-level firm, and I came to New York, and I worked kind of that corporate commercial firm. They offered me a position after law school, you know, making really good money. And I took that job, and I always felt like a square fitting in a circle, because I really, you know, it's like you had to wear skirt suits. And, you know, if I had my hair in a French twist, I got a compliment, which was, you got to wear your hair like this every day, which I couldn't do. You know, I said to the boss, you know, someone had put in 500 bobby pins, and it took them 3 hours. So it wasn't going to look like this every day. And, you know, after a year and a half there, you know, their business had changed. It was a mid-level firm with a small New York satellite office. And I was the only associate, so I didn't come in with a group of associates. And so I was let go, which was great. And they gave me a month they paid me actually to look for a job. And so since at that point, now I was able to, I only looked in entertainment. And I sent my resumes everywhere. And I didn't actually ultimately find a job in the business at that time. And I reached out to my professor from law school, and together we went to a Copyright Society meeting in LA. And I met Ed Pearson, who referred me to David Cotico and Rosemary Carroll, who at the time had a small practice. And I interviewed with them, and they basically offered me 75% less than what I was making. They told me everything I was doing, all the articles I was writing, everything I was doing, I had to quit, that I would, you know, basically they needed me to work 24/7, and I would start in 3 weeks. So I just, you know, follow your dream, the money will follow. I packed up, I moved from New York, and I literally worked 4 years, 6 days a week, 18 hours a day. And it probably took me 4 years to get back to where my pay salary was at the time. But anyway, I ended up at that company for 23 years until I went on my own.
Wow. Wonderful. Kelly, can you give a little bit about your trajectory?
Sure. I guess what kind of spurred me specifically to go into law was I was doing music PR out of college, and that wasn't the right thing for me. And so that kind of prompted me to go into law school. And then when I was in law school, as I said, I was pretty focused on doing music stuff. And so I tried to, you know, work as much as I could during law school while still, you know, attending and getting good grades and everything. And so I just worked at record labels, and I always I also participated in like the entertainment club at law school and stuff like that. And through that, a friend of mine actually was like, I thought I wanted to do music stuff, but I actually want to go into tech. And I have been interning at this law firm. Do you want to maybe talk to them and see if you can take over my internship? And I was like, okay, sure. That sounds good. So I went and spoke to them, and that was the first firm that I ended up working at out after school. So I worked there during between my second and third year, and then throughout my third year, and then kept working there through taking the bar and becoming admitted to practice. So that's where I was before. And then after that, you know, I just felt like I was ready for a change after being there for a while. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at that point. I thought about moving to New York and maybe working for a record label, or staying here, and kind of just like thinking about what the other options were, even though I thought that what I wanted to do was be in private practice and represent clients. And so, you know, after that, through that process, I actually got introduced to the people who I work with currently. And yeah, I started talking to them, and it was one of those things where it just like felt like it was the right fit, and everyone seemed to be, you know, really great people, and, you know, really smart and very dedicated to what they're doing. And, you know, it was just one of those moments when you feel like it's a really, really good fit, and you know that it's the right thing to do next. And so thankfully they hired me, and then I've been there since.
So Kelly, can you speak to, you know, what is it to be an entertainment lawyer? You know, how does that differ from, you know, other practice areas?
Yeah, I mean, so when there's all sorts of different entertainment lawyers and law. I think one of the biggest, you know, differences in type are, you know, there's litigators who help bring lawsuits and things along those lines that happen in the entertainment space. And then there's people like myself and Janine, who are transactional attorneys and work on the, you know, negotiation of contracts and other aspects of people's legal lives. And then you could also be, you know, an in-house attorney, and, you know, this could be
like me, who has just,
yeah, exactly, like you. And it goes across all things. Like, you know, you can work in film and TV and music and both. You know, there are even corporate lawyers who do big corporate transactions in the entertainment space as well. So there's all sorts of different attorneys, I guess, within this space, and all the different facets of entertainment, whether it's, as I said, film and TV, music, live music, you know, and all the different pieces that go into that. Janine, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I guess the thing is that when people are looking for lawyers that are they are musicians or actors or actresses, you do want to pick someone that does have experience in the field. I mean, as a lawyer, I mean, the important thing as a lawyer is we learn to find issues, evaluate, and we need to know many different areas, because, I mean, as entertainment lawyers, we're really, and transactional lawyers, which Kelly and I are, and Jennifer really, right, we deal in contracts and corporate agreements, which really were my two subjects that I liked the least in law school, but somehow that's what we really do for a living, is corporate agreements and contracts. And you know, there's some other elements that matter, right? But what we also need to know is the boilerplate in the specific area that we practice. And you want to make sure that the people are familiar in the world of copyright. I mean, we are kind of like general practitioners. We're not necessarily intellectual property specialists that do trademark and copyright all day long. We do things that involve all different areas of the law: licensing, trademark, copyright. And you just need to know that the person you're working with has experience in that field. And right? And so, you know, whether you need, you know, one or more would depend. Some might think Kelly's firm may do various areas of law, and certainly a music attorney can do some things in film, and they can do some things in books, but you wouldn't necessarily have them do your theater show, right? Unless they have experience in that. So part of it is really understanding what deals they've done before, and, you know,
being able to spot the issues. And I would add, you know, I think effective lawyers are those who are also providing strategic advice, you know, also making connections, you know, introducing a client to another, you know, service provider, or just finding opportunities for them as well. So oftentimes it can go beyond just
that have relationships. It can't always get the deal, but at least they can open the doors. They can get people to, you know, if you're looking for opportunities or where to go, we should be able to, know the players in the field and help get you there. It's a good.
Kelly, can you speak, Kelly or Janine, other business professionals, in the field, and how the role of attorney, is distinguished from, manager perhaps, or
Sure.
the
So,
business?
the way that I think about it is the manager is kind of like, the CEO kind of an artist business. And they, are running all of the different business teams and all of the different aspects of that person's career. And part of that person's career is, an agent usually, which in music usually just handles their live show booking. And then, maybe they'll have another representative at the agency who is also working on sourcing brand deals, or maybe if they're getting into film and TV, those opportunities as well. Also on the team is the business manager who handles all of the finance stuff, from top to bottom, and can help, determine tax issues. And then usually they also work with some sort of either in-house or separate insurance and risk management team to evaluate potential deals from a risk management point of view and an insurance point of view. And then there's us who can advise on business stuff, and also will negotiate and draft all of the agreements that are necessary. I think that the way that lawyers fit in, though, if it's an effectively run team, is that, we're included in a lot of stuff and overall decision making and planning and things like that, because we're able to, provide a different sort of perspective than the other team members are able to. I mean, I personally am not, a lawyer who is able or qualified to give like music advice on, what something sounds like, or, whether a certain drum fill should be in a certain place in a song. But, we're definitely there to consult on big business moves and decisions and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's important. Like in my space, like you said, I do a bunch of work in festivals. And what's important is, people can make all sorts of deals, but they have to know how that deal can work in practice and what people can clear and deliver, right? So, a lot of people can promise the moon, but can you actually deliver what you said for the money that you're making and all of that, right? Because you may have to clear music rights with publishers and with record labels, and there's so, and you have to know that you can get the rights for as long as people want them, and you can clear them. So I think sometimes looking at the whatever the I don't want to say the negotiation, but the contract is as a whole, or the business dealing that you're dealing with, and having everyone kind of come together to understand how it works together and make sure, it can be delivered on time within what, like I said, the insurance requirements and all the other things, make sure all the pieces fit together. And I think managers and, lawyers, sometimes are, also because lawyers, generally cost, depending on how you engage your lawyer, you may not want to use your lawyer for everything. So, there's certain things that managers do that they'll sign them up with ASCAP or BMI or PRO and Sound Exchange. And they do a lot of kind of the day-to-day business stuff that lawyers can help direct them towards, but they may do, some of the task work on their own. So we all work together. They may register copyrights directly and do different things to help save their artists, some costs.
At what point should artists, bring in a lawyer to?
These days, it seems it happens so early. It depends what you're doing and if you can afford the lawyer and everything. I mean, if you're a musician, often they come early. They come sometimes with managers, and they come before. They help build the team. It depends, how you're paying, how you're engaging them, and what you need. But I think the minute you are signing any agreement that has long-term rights, which is giving anyone multiple product, multiple number of years, exclusivity over a product, whether that's a management agreement, a record agreement, a publishing agreement, you absolutely need to hire a seasoned attorney to look at it for you, because those are the ones that will later bite you in the butt. And that's really important. And that's a penny wise and pound foolish decision. I mean, you have to, that's when you need it, and, you always have to be careful giving up rights, but I think if there are one-offs and, you can educate yourself as best you can to protect yourself, maybe you can live without it before then. But I think anytime you're dealing with giving up rights to your property, to any large extent, even, if it's a full album to someone, or, a song, even giving up ownership of a song, if it's something that you've worked hard on and you don't, just want to give away for free, you really need to understand what you're doing.
And I think that's something that's good for people to know who are just starting out, is that most of these agreements are meant to be negotiated. What you get isn't usually a mutually beneficial version of that agreement. It's usually quite one-sided, with the expectation that you'll hire someone to get it into, into good shape where it makes sense for you to sign it.
Yeah, with that, Kelly, I always say to people, like, my motto is everything's worth the paper it's written on. So people will tell you often that an agreement says something, or that they'll let you out the minute you want. Don't worry, I would never hold you to this. And they may not even be malintentioned. People, and maybe a young manager or something, may pull an agreement out of a book and it's just one-sided. But the fact is, if the relationship goes sour, that they're going to pull onto that agreement, and they never just let you out. It never works like that. And they, whether it's intentionally one-sided or not, they almost always are, as Kelly was saying. And they're difficult to understand.
To think through the worst case scenario for you.
Right. And it's really, and it's true. And my motto is kind of everyone's word is worth the paper it's written on. I mean, they can tell you whatever they want, but I feel like I'm a person of my word, and I've had to go, against my word, because, when you represent your client, your job is to represent your client zealously, and, to be, do what your client would like you to do within, of course, within the law. And, they change their mind on something that you thought they had said okay to, then, you have to change your mind, right? So, and as lawyers, that's why we reserve our rights when we do things. But, if my word isn't good, then no one's word is good in my book. So,
and so do clients ever need to hire more than one entertainment lawyer? Or can one just do all?
I think it depends on what you're doing. So if you're with a huge mega firm that has every type of business, you may have different lawyers within that firm working for you. If you hire, your Kelly to do a transactional matter, and then someone, unfortunately there's an infringement, or someone, sues you for some claim, you may need to hire a litigator, which would be a different type of lawyer. And it may, depending on what you're doing, if you're buying a house, you may need a different lawyer, right? So it will depend on the type of projects, because just like anything, many of us are specialists. But I think in terms of all the specialties within music, most of them could be handled by one lawyer, unless you're dealing with very specific things like privacy or, sweepstakes rules or things like that.
Right, and if you're a musician, your main attorney, even if they're specialists, they just specialize in music, and you are buying a house, like, they probably have a good real estate.
That's right. We find people, exactly. We help source everyone for you, of course, and work in conjunction with them, which is super important, Kelly, right? It's like we are usually your kind of, it's like the manager almost of the lawyers, right? Make sure that everybody else on the team is doing what they're supposed to do and staying on task and supervising them, really.
Yeah.
And so how does one find a good entertainment lawyer, and know if they have a good one?
I think it's often referrals and word of mouth. People that have worked with lawyers before, you talk to people and see who they've worked with and who they've liked and they've had good experiences with. I guess you can call the local bar association and ask them, or find out who is in the membership of the bar and what their specialty is, what they work on. Or I said,
complaints, right? If there've ever been bar complaints.
And then of course, you could look them up at the bar and see if there's complaints. And then, of course, now with Google and, with LinkedIn and everything else, we can kind of research people.
And then something else that you can do too is like you can reach out to, a very famous big name lawyer and ask them for a referral too. Like if it's something, where they're maybe not the right person for you, maybe they have someone in mind who could be. who could, you know, help you on whatever it is that you need help on at that time.
And what are the costs of hiring a lawyer?
Well, that can vary. I mean, some lawyers charge on an hourly basis, where, you know, for each hour, or I guess sixth of an hour usually, they'll charge you a pro rata amount, you know, just depending on how long something takes. And that, you know, obviously works for certain situations where, you know, you're paying for the amount of time that it takes. And so that's just the thinking is like, oh, they put in this amount of time, so they get this amount of payment. Another fee arrangement that some lawyers are okay with is a flat fee for like a particular transaction, for example, where, you know, if someone comes and they're like, I need you to negotiate this producer agreement for me, and maybe the lawyer who you're going to has dealt with that artist's attorney before or something, and they have like an idea, they can sometimes say, okay, you know, I'll do this for X amount of dollars. And then I would say the other basis that people charge on is a percentage basis, where, you know, an attorney gets a percentage of the artist's income. And so, you know, the attorney would make that percentage on a transaction where the artist is making income, but wouldn't make it in a situation where they're not. For example, if someone is like if you represent an artist and you're doing their producer agreements for an album, obviously none of those are generating income for that artist. The artist is in fact paying these producers to work with them. But, you know, the thought is that the income from those income bearing projects kind of like spreads out, and everyone nets out where the lawyer feels like they're being adequately compensated for the income generating work and the non-income generating work.
And if someone, you know, was interested in engaging you, you know, do they have to pay that initial meeting, or is there a consultation, and what can they expect if there is a consultation?
My advice for this is to always ask, because you never know. And so whenever you're engaging an attorney, or whenever, if, for example, I'm engaging or helping a client engage, as we said in the example before, like real estate counsel or something, we're always asking all of those questions, you know, like, will you be charging for this consultation? What are your fees going forward? And I know that like maybe some people feel a little bit awkward about having those conversations, but it's totally fair. And you should feel totally empowered to ask, because I always feel like it's better when people are on the same page from the get-go with stuff like that.
Absolutely. And I saw someone here mention in the panel that it's difficult to find an experienced entertainment attorney in Ohio. I mean, it's interesting. As entertainment attorney, most of us, I guess, are in New York, California, maybe Nashville. We are all over. I mean, there's in Chicago, but most of us have clients that are worldwide. I mean, this is, you know, presumably we are supposed to work in the state where we work, but all the contracts we deal with have all different states, no matter what we do anyway. So generally in the transactional world, you know, you're not dealing with specific corporate filings or different things, depending on what it is. You know, you can always get local lawyers, but generally you will probably often find a lawyer that's not necessarily from the city you're in. And being that these are major cities, I mean, the rates for lawyers are they're probably, it could depend, you know, on where the lawyer's at. I'd say they range from in the $2s on the low side, but that would probably be a younger associate, to up to $1,000, you know, right? With somewhere in the middle probably being, you know, like $450, $500, you know, in places like New York and California. It really depends sometimes the experience of the lawyer. I think finding a lawyer that's on a percentage basis, you know, it's going to depend really where your music's at, them listening to the music, believing that they can help you, because it's hard to work for free for too long, you know, and then do a lot of deals for people, because people do that kind of on the, you know, hope and prayer that it's going to be a, you know, bigger payout in the long run, and it's going to make sense. So you both kind of, you know, all ships rise together. And so, you know, it's different arrangements, and not everyone, you know, some people will take those arrangements, some won't, but it, you know, will probably depend a little bit on the music and the trajectory of where you are. And I think, as Kelly said, the flat fee, sometimes, you know, you just need a particular agreement. What will that cost? And I think most entertainment lawyers will have an initial conversation, 5 to 15 minutes, sometimes longer, whatever, to find out kind of what it is and to discuss it. It depends, you know, but in general, most lawyers do that are in this field, and possibly depending on what type of entertainment law, do charge for consultations. So it is a smart thing to ask and know in advance. And you shouldn't be scared ever, you know, where I know it's sometimes scary to deal with lawyers, but basically this is a client business, and the client is always right? They always say, you know, in the client business, the client's always right. And if the client's not right, you're supposed to look at the first rule, which is the client's always right. So.
So, and I guess the one thing I would add is just, you know, if you're an in-house counsel, you're not getting paid by the hour, you're a salaried employee. And so there's no hourly fee that you're charging to your employer. How do you go about becoming an entertainment lawyer? I mean, I think people are interested, and sometimes it feels daunting. Like, how do you get in? What do you do?
I think, you know, taking internships are a good thing. And I know not everyone can do it, you know, but if you can do them through school, if you can find opportunities, even if you're not in a city where there's a music law, I mean, you could possibly work for the local venues. I mean, there's venues everywhere. There's small bars where they're having bands. You know, you need to, basically, a lot of this business is networking and knowing people in the business. So how do you meet people, whether lawyers or non-lawyers? How do you meet people that are in the area that you want to be in, right? Whether that be music or the arts or theater, and, you know, finding whether it's a job at a radio station, you know, kind of making your relationships and what you love. There's volunteer lawyers for the arts program in a lot of cities. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, I was always involved with the American Bar Association Entertainment section. And I later was chair of that section, but I was involved for 23 years. I'm still involved now. I mean, so I'm involved, I'd say more than that, but getting involved in these, I was involved in a young entertainment law group. And I think finding these different groups, and there's so many places now. When I was looking, there was a book called the Encyclopedia of Associations. It was like a 3-volume this thick, and you could find everything, songwriter associations, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was amazing, you know, right? And I'm sure it probably still exists in a library if anyone's ever been to one. But you know, you can find all that online, and there are so many organizations where you can either volunteer your time or just listen, learn, meet people, network, meet up groups. I think all that is really the way to do it, is network.
Yeah, I think the networking is key. I know for me, when I was at a law firm doing corporate finance, and that was all I wanted to do, was to be a partner at a firm doing corporate finance or mergers and acquisitions. And then one day I happened to get a phone call from a friend who went to my high school saying, oh, there's, you know, MCA Records, they're looking for a lawyer. And so at that point, it was, you know, I wasn't even looking, but then I suddenly was, you know, completely excited about the opportunity. And then since then, every role I've had has just been, if I'm ready for a change, it's just communicating within my network. Hey, I'm looking for this. I want to do this. If you hear about an opportunity, let me know. And literally, it's just word of mouth where opportunities will come.
And I guess also knowing the area, like listening to webinars, learning the area, reading the books, you want to be knowledgeable in the area, right? And especially for some people that can't get the job initially, they may just hang their own shingle, and you want to make sure you don't do a disservice to a client. And that may be calling someone like Kelly or I and asking, you know, giving up the fee on the first thing so you can learn and do it with someone. Where you learn how to practice it and how to do it right. And, you know, a lot of it is, you know, doing by rote. I mean, or just by doing, right? I mean, I told you that I worked, you know, 6 days a week for 4 years, you know, like 20 hours a day. And that's how I learned to be a great lawyer. It was just working, you know.
Yeah. And I think that if there's, you know, if you can find a place or turn wherever you are once you are out of law school and maybe practicing in and around entertainment, is making sure you're learning that stuff, you know what I mean? All of the things that you need to know, because so much of what we do is like based on custom in the industry. And like, for example, like a record agreement is a good way to like see everything that's ever gone wrong with a recording artist, because that's the stuff that's in there. And so if you have someone who can kind of walk you through when you're learning things like that, and give you the history lesson behind each sentence that's in there, that's the best way to learn. And so I think that, you know, if you're in that situation, take advantage of it and talk to people and ask questions and all of that, so you can learn as much as possible.
And that's great. Like She Is the Music and Association of Independent Music Publishers, Women in Music, so many places they have these mentor-mentee programs now. I'm mentoring someone right now that didn't even end up being a lawyer. I'm mentoring someone that's working at a record company, but we're working through a producer agreement. But there are so many opportunities now to find things. And Music Biz runs great programs. She Is the Music has great programs, and Kelly and I are going to put together some legal programs. And so there's lots of places where you can learn now online as well, and really do what you can to advance your knowledge.
Wonderful. What does your average day look like? If there's such a thing.
Waking up every day. I think it looks like most people's average day, which is waking up, going to the computer and reading emails, right? And then sifting through those emails and, you know, figuring, I mean, I think everyone may come to the week in mind with all these things they plan to do, right? And then of course you find out what other people plan for you to do during the day as those emails come in.
I think that's exactly it. It's like prioritizing and reprioritizing throughout the day as stuff comes up, and, you know, juggling essentially.
It's right. And it's a lot of reading and a lot of drafting. I mean, we do, and, you know, we talk on the phone somewhat, you know, with clients, but I think not as much Zooms in my experience. There are Zooms, but mostly a lot of it is reading, writing, you know, and researching what you need to know, and just calling colleagues for, you know, thoughts, reaching out to contacts, all sorts of, you know, networking on behalf of your clients or the matters you're working on.
Yeah.
But most of it is behind a desk, unfortunately, you know, most of what, you know, and then of course at night there's networking, going out and meeting people to, you know, also make relationships, to have word of mouth, bring clients to you or find them yourselves. But I think most of what we do is behind a desk, right?
Yeah, someone said to me, they're like, wait, so your job is basically like doing homework all day, like you're just reading.
That's really funny, it is.
And I was like, yeah, thank you.
Kind of, yeah, makes it really attractive. That is what it is.
It's interesting. I find a lot of my day is spent in meetings, and that was one of the things that I do like about being in-house, because I feel closer to the actual business side. And so I am in meetings, whether it's with creatives, whether it's with marketing, whether it's with our digital team, but a lot of it, you know, is just the meetings, understanding what's the strategy, what do we want to build out, and then taking that, giving a lot of legal advice, you know, and what approvals we may need to obtain from artists or things like that. And then obviously there's the drafting, but I feel a lot of my day can be a lot of meetings.
I think in-house is so interesting. I always thought I would love that, you know, like working with all different departments and stuff. It's less meeting based what we do, but when do you guys get it must be hard to then find the time to get the work done, right?
It can be hard to find the time to actually draft. And that's why, you know, we have oftentimes bigger teams, and oftentimes it's your junior lawyers who are doing more of the drafting, which is important because that's where you learn and you really get comfortable in your understanding of the material when you have to draft and think through the different, you know, ask. And then I feel as you start to become more senior, it becomes less drafting and more meetings, and just more strategizing.
Which is, yeah, it's great.
What would you say, and I think this might be the last question before I turn to answer some of the questions that have come in. What would you say has been the most fulfilling thing about, you know, this professional path? And has it met or exceeded your expectations of what it would be?
One small thing that comes to mind for me was actually something that a client's manager said to me last week. And he was just like, Kelly, I don't think we could get anything done without you. Like, I don't think we could make any of this work. And so that to me was like, oh, like, I feel like I do, you know, have a positive impact on it. What I really find fulfilling in this career is that you are making a very tangible contribution to your client's career. It's not something vague. It's not like, you know, it's just very specific. You're like, I am enabling you to do these things, you know, to put your art out in the world. And that's what I find fulfilling, and, you know, helping people and helping them do that in the smartest way possible. I think is yeah, what's fulfilling to me.
It's a great answer. I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, because it's hard. Being a lawyer is a hard job, and it's, you know, it's tasking. I mean, you have to, you know, there's a lot to know. You can't know everything. It's a, you know, it's a draining job, and I think, you know, doing what we love, I mean, doing it in an area that we love, most people get into the area of the arts because that's what they love as a whole. You know, we get to, you know, we don't get to go to concerts all the time and everything else, but you do sometimes get to get the special pass and to, you know, have a special in to see what things are. And you really do, I think what Kelly said, like, to see what you create comes together. You know, I was the lawyer for Bonnaroo for many years, and just to do all those deals, and then all of a sudden to go to the first Bonnaroo and to stand on that stage and see 70,000 people out there and realize you were part of it is so incredible. So,
yeah, there's something magic about the live shows for sure.
Yeah. And it's great. And also knowing you're helping people. I mean, you know, it's you know, and I mean, look, we're not curing cancer or anything, but we are helping people retain their rights and, you know, navigate their life to make sure they can, you know, make the living that they should be making.
That's true. And you know, while we may not be, you know, curing cancer, I think oftentimes we're helping people create the music that helps people endure and get through those difficult times, bring some joy. And that's one of the things that I love about what we do. And I also love just facilitating dreams of creators, and just being part of that process of, you know, connecting the dream with the business and connecting it with the audience. And it's, you know, I find that to be quite fulfilling.
Yeah.
So as women in this industry, can you speak to, you know, any of the challenges you faced, if you feel that you have faced any being a woman?
I mean, you know, there's certainly a boys club. There's been a boys club. There's a lot of, there's boys clubs in all the different practices. So I think sometimes it's been a little, you know, it's not always, you can't always get necessarily the clients because they have cliques with each other. But I think now that women have such a bigger role in the business now, we have a little bit of our own club that's making a difference. And it's great. But I think also, you know, and of course the, you know, women were certainly women of, you know, my day and stuff were, yeah, it was a little more, you know, there was, before the whole Me Too thing and everything else, there was a lot of more subjugation kind of in the business. There was a lot of, you know, catcalling and all that stuff, and, you know, needing to look a certain way and be a certain way. And I think people may have gotten further along, you know, in always case, you know, if they had a certain look and feel in some ways, you may want to say, you know, right? But that's probably something normal in a lot of businesses. But, and I think getting the respect from your peers,
yeah,
isn't always something easy to get. You know, they don't, you know, sometimes you're seen as, you know, yeah, it's interesting. When I was making a change in my life at one point, I realized that as women, I think we sometimes think, like, if we see a job and there's 10 things that you need to do and we can do 6 of them, we wouldn't necessarily feel secure enough to go for that job.
Right.
We'd be like, oh, I don't know if I can. And I think a man looking at the same thing, and, you know, this is stereotypical, but would be able to do 2 and say, I can do 2 things, I can go for that job. And, you know, the confidence level isn't always there. And I had to kind of get myself in the mind space of that. If I can do 2 things, I can do anything. Like, there's a failing up mentality sometimes, I think, in this business and many businesses where, you know, people that you don't sometimes understand how they got there, they get there. And maybe that's confidence and whatever else, but, you know, you have to kind of believe in yourself. If you can't do it, then you won't have that job anymore and you won't make it. But if, but give us, if you know that you have the capacity to learn and you're smart and you've gotten as far as you can, look at what you've done in the past and believe in yourself that you can do it going forward. And I think we have to give ourselves a little more of the benefit of the doubt that if we can do less than half, we still are probably great candidates for that gig. We have to certainly evaluate yourself fairly. If you can't do any of it, you shouldn't be going for it, but you can learn, right?
Yeah, I think that that's totally right. I think that getting into the mindset is exactly what it is. I think that, even if it's scary, even if you feel nervous, doing it, I think that doing it is the right thing to do. And I just feel like, thinking through, like, just imagine us telling you to, have that confidence and take that risk and be pushed forward. And yeah, I guess, for me, I've definitely had to fight to be taken seriously sometimes, or people have, thought that I was someone's assistant instead of like the actual attorney on a project and stuff like that before, which is, not my favorite thing to deal with, but you end up proving yourself, time over time, and as your confidence grows, like, I think that it definitely helps make you more capable of overcoming the adversity that you face.
Right. There was one comment about, the space still feels predominantly white and male. And I just wanted to address, if you look at music, music really reflects culture. And again, all voices, all representations, there is value. And so if you just look at the music itself, I think that tells you that there's a space for all people within this industry. And it's just, to make yourself seen and heard, and, and when you, show up curious, show up ready to work hard, show up ready to learn.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, like, when you are in a position where you are able to make hiring decisions and things like that, keep diversity in mind, because I think some people just don't even think about it still. And that is something that's just so important to create better, organizations that are in this space.
Another question is, do you think being double barred in both California and New York has been useful in your career? And what are the benefits? Janine, do you want to go first?
Well, I guess it's been, if you want to work in a different state than you're, in a different state, then you need to be barred. If you need to, like for me, I was I went to school in California, but I ended up practicing in New York. So I took the New York bar exam. But then I found myself, I moved to California, and, to practice law there, I needed to take the bar. And certainly taking the bar 3 years out was a harder proposition than it was at the beginning. So if you're in a position in New York where you can take maybe the New York and New Jersey bar at the same time, if you think you may want to work in New Jersey, it may be worth doing. I mean, there was a time I thought about, you can waive into certain states, like waiving into DC, but of course, the more bars you have to pay dues and do other things and keep up with the CLEs. So, I think it makes sense if you think you're going to move somewhere, and certainly it's easier to do these things when you were still close to law school.
Those are excellent points, Janine. I decided to become barred in New York, maybe, 15, 20 years after law school.
Oh, wow, yep.
And it was like going to law school all over again, because laws are not static. And so I really—
You don't remember what you learned in law school 20 years ago.
I had to relearn, right? And so that's great advice, that if you think you want to practice, in different states, take those bar exams closer to when you've completed law school. For me, ultimately, why I decided, I was working in-house. And so working in-house in New York, and I wasn't barred there, and I didn't need to be barred there as long as I was in-house, because there was something you could register as in-house counsel. But what I decided to take the New York bar because I thought, should I ever not be working at this company and I wanted to go into private practice, I wanted to be prepared to do that.
Which you never did ultimately, right?
Never did. Almost right after I took the New York bar, I moved back to California. So.
You have it.
But I have.
It gives you the ability. So if you ever come back, then you want to come back here, right?
Michelle, should I address another question or should we be wrapping up? Or? I don't know where we are on time.
Well, can keep going. We can take a few more minutes.
Okay, wonderful. What do you think makes a good junior associate or legal coordinator who's just starting their career out of law school? What makes them good?
I think that the first and most important thing is just organization. I feel like starting good habits for tracking your to-do list, and I know this is just so technical and boring, but like all of that stuff I think is a really, really good foundation of where to start, because if you have that, then as stuff gets crazier and crazier, you'll still be able to handle it. And then as I said before, like taking the opportunity to learn as much as you can about everything. Like even if you are, for example, working in-house at a record label or something, like maybe take home like the file of an artist that you love or something and just read through that and see like how the negotiation went and look at the different drafts of everything and like, you know, learn the ins and outs of where everything can go in an agreement. And I would just take advantage of whatever you have access to.
Yeah, and then in that light, I mean, working, you know, it's really about as much as you can do. I mean, being willing to work long and hard, and you know, especially at the beginning, and just, you know, not really, it's not really a 9-to-5 job in any way. And but you know, it takes a year and a half, I would say, to really understand the nuts and bolts well enough to feel really confident. And the more you do, the more you do, the more agreements you do, you know, the better it kind of, you know, comes together. And, you know, that all just takes time and effort. So it's, you know, being willing to raise your hand and get down and dirty and get involved. And I think, you know, certainly being organized and understanding things and doing what you can, I think it's a great idea to kind of learn, you know, to find forms and kind of see the trajectory of a deal and understand it. Ask questions. Don't be scared to ask questions.
And Kelly, you made a good point in that, you know, when you said it's technical, but the profession is technical. So I think it's important to appreciate that and to know that you enjoy dealing in details. Some people want to be more high level.
Really, all detail, but at the it's a very detail oriented job.
The practice of law, it really is detail oriented.
Yeah. It's the forest and the trees.
Right. So for someone who is an aspiring music manager, does it make sense to attend graduate school and specifically law school? Does that make sense career-wise?
I kind of feel like you should go to law school if you want to be a lawyer. I know that there are plenty of people who haven't ended up being a lawyer, but I just feel like there's other ways you can learn without going to school. You know, I think that if you are an aspiring manager, maybe you want to go work for a management company and learn everything you can from the people who are experts at what they do, and, you know, develop your own business in conjunction with that.
And I think, I mean, if you're going to maybe get an MBA, that maybe would make sense if that helps you understand businesses and strategy. I mean, I guess if you did something that was tailored to what you were looking to do, it may make sense. Some sort of program. I mean, my father used to say you could go to law school, you didn't have to become a lawyer. It's a good thing to have, you know, because a lot of people were lawyers that didn't practice. Of course, you know, 15 years later, when I told him I was thinking of not being a lawyer, I was told, what do you mean? How can you not be a lawyer? You've been a lawyer all this time. But, you know, I don't know that you just need to do that. If, you know, you kind of don't know what you want and you want to have more expansive knowledge, it'd be okay. But I don't know if that necessarily brings, you know, it does help add more. But I think as a manager, if you're doing this type of business, it's really doing the work that would be helpful for what you're doing. And I think, like Kelly said, working with people or possibly being in programs where they do focus on that and bringing in people from the business and you're learning specifically, you know, masters in that area.
What advice do you have for young professionals that are coming from a different industry like tech, you know, who want to move into music or entertainment?
I mentioned that I was a member of the American, and I was on the chair of the American Bar Association. I see Judy Tint, our current chair, is one of the attendees. And it's been a great group for me for networking and stuff. So the American Bar Association Sports and Entertainment section. And we have, the great thing about it is there's 10 or 12 different divisions, and there's sports, and there's BSLA, the Black Entertainment Sports and Law Association. There is local bar associations, but for, you know, and BSLA also, I think like us, you know, we have sports division, arts division, which could be fine arts, museums, theaters, film, TV, music, tech. There's just all international diversity. There's all different kind of practices, being a public practice lawyer. And so that's a great way to network. And they have social events. I was also involved in the Copyright Society of the USA. They have brown bag things, but you network with other lawyers, and you get to meet the other lawyers, you learn from them, and then you have cocktails with them, and you go do different things. We have a 2 or 3 day event in Vegas. BSLA has events that they also do, and there's others that do it. You know, they do it in the Caribbean sometimes. If you can't afford these events, you can often try and get a scholarship and volunteer. They all give a number, you know, maybe not a ton of scholarships, but a few. And if you don't ask, you don't get. So I think doing those things, or ability to network with lawyers, become friendly with them. You can possibly look to them for advice. And also at some point when they hear of jobs, they may think of you and refer you. In fact, that's how I said I had gotten my first job, was from someone that I had met through the group who knew someone was looking, and they referred me to that job.
Is law school beneficial if you're interested in a career that isn't legal, but you want to do something like business development, brand partnerships? Would law school benefit you?
I think it could benefit you. I just don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, I think it's the same as before, that what we were saying, right? That it would depend, you know. I think going instead, you can go to, like, you know, one of these conferences, which is a brand conference, where you learn a ton of stuff. And they have all different speakers in the area, you know, and again, the same thing, you can possibly get a free, you know, if you can't afford it, maybe you can find a way to get in. But there's so many conferences now on everything, right?
How easily transferable is, you know, experience working as a legal assistant in music, if your end goal is to work in publishing?
I think it's probably pretty, I mean, it depends what kind of stuff you're assisting on, but if you're assisting on publishing, you know, transactions, and you're learning about it, and you're able to talk to the lawyers that you're working with about it, then I think that that would be great experience. I think that, like, if you can say to a publishing company, hey, I've worked with this lawyer doing XYZ publishing agreements, that's great experience to have.
Yeah, if you're learning and if you're proactive. I mean, sometimes legal assistants can act as paralegals. I mean, if you can show the initiative, and depending on the lawyer you're working for, you can be doing licensing, sync licensing and master licensing, and certain types of agreements, helping people with their organization and their charts. So you know, you probably want a lawyer that does work in that field, and to get a sense, and to tell the lawyer that this is what you're interested in. And I think if not, like Kelly said, maybe then you could be reading their deals just to kind of learn yourself, and listening in periodically to calls, you know. So you do learn a lot.
Yeah, just take advantage of what you have access to.
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point, you know, you got to look for the job, you know, before you get stuck too long. But I think always it doesn't matter. I mean, there's a lot of learning to be had, you know, right? So
another question. If I'm an up and coming artist, songwriter, should I have my own publishing company?
I think that that's kind of a tough question, and we need to probably have some more information to answer that one.
Yeah, but certainly you would sign up with, you know, a PRO, and you would have a publishing company to collect your money, you know. So I mean, I think you do need to you know, do the basics and figure out what you need to do to sign up for you know, different things to ensure you can collect your rights. And I think someone asked, you know, there are many basics on all those things for artists out there. Music Biz being one place that has it, the Bar Association piece. I mean, so many, she's a music sites, I think has a basics on publishing, and it will explain some of these things on collection. I'm pretty sure actually She's the Music has done something on the basics of publishing. So it's worth looking at them and just making sure you are doing what you need to collect the monies that are out there.
Are there any particular books that you think are good reads in terms of understanding the business?
I think that the Passman book is still great. I think that something else is, it's really important to stay up on what's going on in the industry and, you know, new legal precedent and all of that stuff as well. So, you know, staying current with all of the publications is also really important, and you can learn a lot through those.
Yeah, that Don Passman book is everything you want to know about the music business. I think Peter Thal has a book called, it's also something about the music business. Someone was telling me about that recently. And Jeff, the Braybecks have a book on publishing. Right. That's
Music,
really
Money,
good.
and Success, I think.
Music, Money, and Success. I mean, I just ordered a few because I want to read them myself, because I always tell people what to go to, but I figured maybe I should figure out if I think they're a good book. But yeah, but there are those, I think, are three that I've heard of, and there's many out there.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you. This was informative for me, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. So thank you. And hopefully everyone else found it informative as well. And one ask was if we could put the titles of the books in the chat. I don't know.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Kelly, and She's the Music, and Jennifer.
Yes,
great to be with you girls.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll look up these books. Okay. And there you go. I know Jennifer was sitting here. I was thinking we didn't get to hear yours. You have such an interesting story and what you've done. You've done some amazing things.
Yeah, my story has just been one of moving from one company to the next. But, you know,
there's been pretty great companies you've worked for. So
it was AOL's first music specific hire. So I feel like I was a pioneer in the internet space when it was like, what is this? What is email?
That's right. No, and it's great, you know, the internet, I mean, that's the place to be in the business. So
yeah, the digital nowadays. And I mean, that's what's been fun for me, just kind of being in these, that's what I've enjoyed about practice of law is as these, you know, new businesses or new technologies, you know, understanding what are the rights around them and what are the business models that will succeed. It's all been interesting, and again, allows me to feel pioneering in a sense.
That's great.
Awesome. So there's.
Well, thank you all. I put the 3 books I mentioned in there, and I think other people had done that as well. So there you go.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone have a good. I look forward to dancing with all of you at a show soon, post-pandemic. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.